Welcome, podcast fans. It's time for the What's Up Bro podcast show presented by j&jproductionstudios, the home for all your entertainment needs. All kinds of great topics discussed every week, a variety of different themes offered, special guest appearances, prize giveaways, and so much more. Stay tuned. And now, here are your hosts, Sam Crow and Big Hoss.
Well, hello there. Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the show. I know it's kind of not our customary time slot, but you guys know we've been running a special series. We've had a lot of great guests on here tonight. We do continue that. It is Sam Crow here with Taskmaster Bill. And presenting here, first and foremost, again, if you guys are not familiar with, this is part of our 1001 Cryptic Tales, a spooktacular horror series. This series, we feature a lot of fine folks in the horror genre, from directors, actors, special effects, authors we're having on, just about anything horror related that's there, with the agenda that we are hoping to help promote, educate people. You know, everybody we know, like all of us, likes a good slasher, likes a good blood and gore killing themed movie, but to also show appreciation for the folks that put a lot of effort, what they do, what goes on behind the scenes. We've all seen it with films. You might know how, action films are made, romances. Yes, horror is in the same genre, but you don't maybe understand the full complexity of what goes into the making of the film, which is wonderful because tonight's guest, we want to welcome to the show, and I want to make sure I have my effects thing ready because I always mess this up. We do have special effects. We're fancy that way. We want to welcome, making his first appearance on the show, Mr. Rolfe Kanefsky, everybody. Welcome. Hello.
Hello.
We are so glad you could join us. I'm gonna say what it is you do, because the first question I always ask anybody, and when it's your inaugural visit, when you come on the very first time, and we say it this way: we want to ask Rolfe to tell us, assuming I know, but the audience, people watching, who is Rolfe Kanefsky? What is your specialty? What do you do? And if people have never heard of you before, what's your claim to fame? I guess we could put it that way.
Okay, so I'm a independent filmmaker, writer, director, sometimes producer. Basically, I started very young. I did my first feature film with a lot of support from my family, a movie called There's Nothing Out There, which has since become kind of a culty movie, and still probably maybe my best well-known film that I've made. But since then, I've jumped around to many genres, gone back to horror many times too. I love the genre, and just been struggling independent filmmaker for the past almost 40 years, I guess. Yeah.
But living the dream for sure. I mean, you probably wouldn't change a moment, right? If you had to go back.
Not a moment. No.
It's worth, they say the best things, and we always say here, what we talk about is, success is measured in different ways. It depends on the person. It's not always how people perceive it. It's what you perceive of yourself. Everybody has a different level of what they consider success. So, you may not be a billionaire. You may not be a, rich and famous. I'm just thinking off the cuff, like the Spielbergs types, or people that have had, the well-known fame. Maybe you don't have a Hollywood star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame, but you have had a successful career. Another general question we ask, I know you've done a lot of different genres, but as you say, horror has been there. What is it, or was it about horror that really kind of like sucked you in and made you really want to get more on the creative side of it?
Well, the film, I've said this many times, the film that I fell in love with when I was about 5 years old was, my father introduced me to Abbott and Costello movies.
Okay.
The first one I saw, I caught the end of Abbott and Costello Meet Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, which
Classic.
I thought was great. And then it took me a while to get through the first 5 minutes of Abbott and Costello Meet Frankenstein, because the werewolf transformation scene scared the hell out of me. But once I heard Costello say, "Don't put your doggy on the phone," you call all the way from London, have your dog talk to me, I laughed, and I fell in love with comedy horror.
Okay.
And that kind of relationship, over the years, and American Werewolf in London and Tremors and Fright Night, and just grew up loving that sort of genre where you're laughing, you're scared at the same time, and it's a fun roller coaster thing. So, and then knowing early, I got a video camera when I was 13, realizing I wanted to become a filmmaker. I started researching and realized that horror films were where most first-time filmmakers start.
Okay.
Going back to, Spielberg and Oliver Stone and Coppola and Sam Raimi, of course, and Peter Jackson. So I started watching every film on video and all the tropes, and I said, well, because they scared me, horror films. I had nightmares with, I mean, the shirt I'm wearing, this one I saw when I was 10, terrified me in the theaters. But I wanted to know the business, so I started going to conventions, reading screenplays, doing all the research. And then the thing was going to Fangoria conventions and, you know, all these Comic Cons. The fan base were so cool, and everyone really loves the genre. They do it because they really love doing the genre. Whereas in the other part of the film business, there's a lot of backstabbing and other things going on. Everyone's trying to jockey up the ladder. Whereas if you work in genre, because it was always in the studio world considered just one small step above pornography, you know, just never got the respect it got. But that's why people were supportive. They want you to succeed, and the fan base is so cool that I liked that. I met friends in that group. I went to one convention after I did my first film, and Jeff Burr came up to the table, and he was promoting Texas Chainsaw Massacre 3 that he just did. And he watched my trailer. He thought it was great. And he said, he gave me his number. He said, when you come up to LA, look me up. And he basically introduced me to my group of friends that are out there now. And that was their thing. So, yeah.
Now, Rolfe, I know that you've done many different genres. You're not just horror. You've done comedy. You've done romance. You've done a little bit more on the sexy side films. That's quite a diverse catalog you have. Who would have been your early influences? Was it like a Hitchcock, a De Palma, or would it have gone like more mainstream in Stanley Kubrick? Like where does your thinking come from?
It was Spielberg.
Okay.
I saw E.T. when I was 12. I think it was the perfect movie, and I saw it 9 times in the theaters. I loved it. I did love Hitchcock. I grew up watching on television, but Spielberg was kind of, and then when I researched his career, and I was like 21 when he first did his professional thing, so I was kind of pushing towards that. I said I want to do something by the time I'm either his age or before, you know, when he did it. And luckily, through doing short films in high school, and I did 2 feature films in high school, and then moving on to college, and really pushing my parents, and I started writing screenplays. I went to there's a thing called HB Studios in New York City, which was I took acting and speech and screenwriting when I was 14. We were the youngest people. Everyone was like 20s or 30s, and me and my friend and we were the only ones doing the assignments. I was always writing, so I always loved it. And that led to the first screenplay I wrote, which I did not know at the time, but it was a script I called Crime Wave, and I discovered Sam Raimi had done a movie called Crime Wave, and then my first film, very much Evil Dead inspired, because once I discovered that too, I was like, oh, look what he did. I was pushing towards that, and I came up with, Cabin in the Woods, 7 characters, and I went with an alien creature versus a slasher or demonic thing, because I thought you could do more with that. Wrote, and when I was still in high school, I was a senior, I wrote There's Nothing Out There. And then in college, I started really pushing to try to get this film made, and luckily, we found a few private investors, and I was able to do the film when I was 20 in the summer of 1989. So,
wow.
And as a follow-up, why were you enamored behind the camera when a lot of people want to be in front of the camera?
They want to be like actors. Yeah, it's a good question.
Okay, good answer. I started wanting to act, and I first wanted to be, I guess, a clown and then a comedian, because I always liked comedy. I did like stand-up and other people's material, and then I eventually started.
You wanted to be Peter Sellers.
I liked a little Peter Sellers, although I did grow up. Although now it's bad to say, but I mean, he was clean, and I loved Bill Cosby and all of his albums, so I did routines like that. Now, of course,
a lot has changed since then. Yeah.
Oh yes,
you wouldn't advertise that anymore.
No, I know, but it's true. And it's
in his heyday, though. In his heyday,
for kids too, it's funny. You know, I won a talent show when I was in 4th grade. Anyway, I started doing theater, so I was acting, I was taking courses, and I did want to become an actor. And then in high school, I was in a terrible play production of The Sting. Someone actually turned the movie into a play, because I guess there were so many parts in it, and it was 2 directors. I think it was a boyfriend girlfriend, and they were both giving different direction. Just before the performance, they yelled at all of us in high school, saying the show's going to suck, and we were all terrible, and it was a horrible experience. And I was like, I worked so hard trying to do something good, and at the end of the day, if it turns out to be crap, what's the point? So at that point, I'm like, I want to step behind the camera or behind the stage and control it, because at least if I'm going to work this hard, I want the final result to be something I'm proud of.
Absolutely,
and that's
makes
what
sense.
Swayed into taking control and writing and directing more than, performing.
I mean, I can see where, it's a common trend we see like a lot of days now. There's a lot more. I mean, TV and movies alike, there are a lot of more actors that are stepping into that director role. Like they're directing, not necessarily always themselves, but I don't know. It's almost like I made this joke before where now you see all these musicians that want to be actors. All these actors want to be musicians. And now the actors are also doing it in the director. I can't think of any top of my head. I know I've seen someone like, oh, he's directing this episode of the show. He's the star lead, but he's directing it now. Which is it?
Well, I can tell you a story about that. That was.
I was just going to say, you see people like Jordan Peele and Clint Eastwood do it, and they think, okay, I can slide in. It's not quite that easy.
No, it's not. But this is what happened. So I did There's Nothing Out There. It got very good reviews. We played film festivals. Studios didn't understand it because this was before Scream and that combination of comedy and horror. Even though I've said that many people have done it before me, they didn't understand it because they were like, it's very funny. I'm laughing. It's a horror film. Am I supposed to be laughing? And this I later heard exactly what John Landis went through with American London for 10 years.
It clicked later.
It's too funny to be scary. It's too scary to be funny. We don't know what it is.
Yep.
And I got through a cousin who had worked on the film, who had moved to LA before me. He started working on Ricochet, that Joel Silver production with Denzel Washington.
Yep.
And he was driving Robert Zemeckis' wife to the set because she was an actress in, his Tales from the Crypt episode, as well as, she was always there. And they were talking and mentioned the film, and she's like, oh, it sounds just like how Stephen and Robert started. Robert should see the film. And she gave him the number at Amblin. And eventually they checked it out, saw it was real, and I got invited to screen the film for Robert Zemeckis at Amblin, which was awesome. So I flew out to California. He did watch the whole movie, just the PA, me, and my cousin and him. There were no like a lot of cell phones there, so there were no interruptions. Sure. And he liked the film. He didn't love the film, unfortunately, because at the time he was producing Tales from the Crypt, which I was watching, and I thought There's Nothing Out There was a perfect calling card to get an episode of Tales from the Crypt. And we did talk for a while afterwards, and I finally did bring it up and said, I love Tales from the Crypt. He goes, well, you would be good for that, but unfortunately this season, which was season 3 or 4, all the actors are directing episodes. Schwarzenegger's doing one, Tom Hanks is doing one, Michael J. Fox is doing one. He wasn't lying, it was true. But that was the year everyone decided, let's dip our toes into directing.
Let's just do it. Yeah, we're going to do it.
All the assignments were taken. And
I'm just curious, how did Arnie do behind the camera?
I think he did okay. He did a Christmas movie. He did a remake of Christmas Connecticut for television. He dabbled a few times. It was okay, but it was not their calling, and it was.
It's not his forte.
It was just bad timing because I was like, I thought that would have been a great stepping stone into.
Oh, absolutely.
The system. And Zemeckis' advice was, well, you obviously know how to direct a movie, so write a script that everyone loves, and then say, I want to direct it, and that's how you can get in the door. And
makes sense.
It's not that easy, but that was.
He makes it sound that way, the way he says it, kind of thing. Like
that was like 1992, around there.
Okay. Yeah, no, it's always fun. It's nice to dabble. Obviously, everybody's, especially in this day and age, everybody's doing something. Like even the podcast world, everybody's got some kind of show. They're doing something. These weren't things, 30 years ago. I mean, obviously, that's not a new concept, but it's like it has changed so much where almost everybody's doing something. Whether it's, like I said, these musicians now want to act. They want to branch off. They already have these best-selling platinum albums, all this stuff. But they're getting into the acting because they want to try something different. Same thing. These actors now are cutting albums. They're doing, I get it. But it just makes it probably more cutthroat in some ways because you have so many people trying to do it. And then, of course, it makes it, I don't want to say next to impossible, but it's got to be difficult to try to find spots where, hey, like you want to direct, but like you said, so-and-so is already directing.
When someone who's a celebrity in whatever profession wants to get into it, they get top priority because everyone knows who they are and they have a fan base and they have everything else going on. So it makes sense.
For every Rob Zombie, there's a few that fail.
Yes.
So here I'm going to slide into something slightly different. You started out as horror and you've dipped into comedy. What's the difference between directing an intense horror film versus a rom-com for TV? Do you approach it any different? Do you have different allowances in the script? Budgetary? Like, what's the difference in the two?
Well, okay. So, budget's a whole different matter. Comedy, this is the old saying, like it's hard to teach comedy. Either
Mhm.
you have an instinct towards comedy or you don't.
You
So
don't. Yep.
casting actors, it's like, okay, my second movie that I did part of was a family film, and I got it from There's Nothing Out There. It was just they were looking for they liked the film. Was a movie called My Family Treasure, which nobody has seen. It's almost impossible to find. But it was the first time I worked with Dee Wallace Stone, who I was, like she worked with Joe Dante and Spielberg and Blake Edwards.
Did you work with her before Cujo?
It was after Cujo. We talked about
Exactly.
Cujo. Yeah, we talked about Cujo. We talked about Spielberg. We talked about everything. And she's a great actress and a wonderful person, but she's not a comedian. And I had this whole physical slapstick thing with her, and she couldn't do it. And I had been studying at this point, and I love Blake Edwards and Peter Sellers, like you said. And when you watch those movies, like in whatever, Jackie Chan, Gene Kelly, you have someone so talented, you let the camera wide and you let them do it. And it's much better than trying to force it in the editing room. You just let the slapstick occur, because if it can be done, in one take, if you literally watch the Blake Edwards movies, they're long takes. That's how you shoot a good comedy, and then it's just funny. I tried to do that with her, and I realized she just doesn't have that. She's not Lucille Ball. So I had to spend all day shooting pieces and everything to edit it in the editing room. It worked okay. It wasn't great, but it was. I learned that was the difference, because I did say I know how a good comedy should work, where you just let it play. You don't chop it up. You look at His Girl Friday. These are long. Back in the Preston Sturges, the entire scene is one take. And that's what I like to do. I like to push the camera in, pull it out, let it just play, and like a play, you let it flow. And if the dialogue works, you don't need to chop. The opposite of Michael Bay. So that's how I did that. Whereas with horror, it's atmosphere and style. Comedy is usually not flatly lit, but you want to see everything. Whereas horror, it's what's in the shadows. And that's why studying Halloween, of course, and negative space. You don't know where it's going to catch you. So I forever I was wanting to shoot 2:3:5, the scope ratio, because you can really use the frame in a horror film properly if you know how to use it. You don't just center everyone. You have people in the corner of the frame and all that stuff. So I finally got to do that on a movie called Tomorrow by Midnight, which we got to shoot on 35 millimeter. And it was a one location movie, and I really used the space, and that was great.
Because you're one of the few directors that I know of that has made that successful transition back and forth. I know that Fulci used to bounce around, and the one that I think about really is Bob Clark. He can do Death Dream, and then he can do the Christmas Story. So it can be done if you're, even Spielberg, you could say, has bounced around a bit different genres.
Oh, he's done tons of stuff,
And so it's, theoretically, yes, you are directing, but like directing Eddie Murphy is different than directing Roddy McDowall. Like it's a different ball of wax.
Well, I've been lucky in terms of the name actors or character actors I've worked with, who sometimes I hear, watch out for them. Luckily, they've all been really cool. They've been. I haven't had any problems with the name. The only problems I had with actors were usually the actresses who were starting out, or the diva mentality, who aren't known, but they have their agents and managers, praising them so much they become full of themselves, and they've become problems on the set because they just want to have fun. They don't realize how much hard work it is, and it's all about the trailer and the door and makeup, and it's like you got to get on the set on these independent films and do the work. And when you're shooting sometimes 15, 20 pages a day, you got to know your stuff. So I said I've worked with actors who are, especially in the late night cable movies, who aren't experienced at all, but at least if they're willing to give it 110%, fine. I'm good with that. It's when someone is lazy and doesn't really give it their all, that's when that's upsetting.
Now, one thing I've always been curious about with directing is, how do you handle scenes that involve nudity? Do you close the set? Are the actresses and the actors obviously told ahead of time? Do they practice?
I my first film, Nothing Out There, there's nudity. There's plenty of nudity in the film and simulated love scenes. And luckily we had 3 weeks of rehearsal in that movie. I did 1 week with the actors and just went over the script and everything. 1 week in a dance studio where we choreographed all the action and fight sequences. and then 1 week on location where I shot almost the entire film on video before we shot it on film. Sorry.
You're good.
There.
Say, who was that just passed us?
That was my cat.
Yep.
Beautiful. What's your cat's name?
That was Coco.
Oh, Coco. Beautiful.
Yeah, he just.
Anyway,
so I was saying, so in the nudity, well, in the rehearsal, obviously it was on this call. They came in, they said some nudity required, typical thing.
Right.
In those days, you did do body checks, just to make sure, usually just topless, because having an actor say they will do nudity and actually doing the nudity is
two different things
about it. So it's not just we want to see them naked, but you have to make sure they're actually going to do it. And if they give excuses, they're not really comfortable doing it. And I didn't want to trick anybody into trying. You're very straightforward. You're telling me, and I knew shot for shot. I do shot list detail. I'm like, this is what we're going to see. This is how we're going to shoot it. I mean, it's very detailed. When I did the late night cable movies where there's lots of simulated love scenes, because that's the part of Cinemax. I was the only one, as I said, because I saw Basic Instinct. I said, well, that's how you do it. You choreograph it, you rehearse it, you work it all out. It's like a dance. Everyone knows what they're doing, why they're doing it. Everyone's comfortable with each other, so no one's doing something that's makes anyone feel awkward. And that was, to me, the best way to do it at all. As long as the people were.
I'm assuming you closed the set.
We closed the set as much as possible. On those movies, if the actors are comfortable, it doesn't matter. But you had a camera, you're on location. There's still crew people around. There's always people trying to peek in. And I worked as a PA on Troma's War before I started directing, and there was some nudity in that movie. And I remember everybody was outside the tent with the girl in pink, was wanting to see her naked and peeking through the little.
Wow.
It comes with it, but it's like those are.
It's interesting you brought up Troma's War, because some might say you and Lloyd are kind of contemporaries in that, lower budgeted films, but you get the most out of them. What would you say to the director who says, "Oh, I don't want to do a B film. I want to go up to MGM"? What would your advice be to that?
There's two trains of thought. There's the, you want to have enough time and money to do it properly, and if you do something that's substandard, it's not going to help your career. Versus the more you do, the more you learn, and the better you get. And the experience of doing it, like you can learn going to film school, you can learn the technique and this and that, but it's a different world. And I experienced that firsthand because I was going to Hampshire College, fighting with the professors, and I did like a short student film that's in the beginning of There's Nothing Out There called Just Listen on the Monitor. And it was like a Alfred Hitchcock thriller horror thing with a slasher in the woods and a psychological 12-minute short. And I showed it for the class, and the class said, and the teacher said, because it worked. And the teacher said, well, that shows you how easy it is to do a horror film. Because he had no interest in the genre, just no respect for it. It's like, we want you to do War and Peace and do some arty films and,
right. Yeah.
So they hated it. And then I did a PA work on a slasher film that no one ever saw in New York called Pose for Murder.
Mm-hmm.
And I showed my short film to the producers and the directors, and they loved it. And even somebody said, he stole that shot from you. And they were like, this is great. So I was like, okay, the academic world hates what I'm doing, but the professional world, which I want to get into, thinks it's really good. So I learned very quickly the difference between school and the business. And I think you learn that from doing it, working on sets, doing PA work, learning all the jobs, and you respect everyone there. And that way you're not a spoiled brat, like, gimme. You're like, if you're doing craft service and, lugging cables and all that stuff, you learn, you make friends with everybody and you know what the jobs are. So I think I think acting is good because you can talk with actors. Writing is obviously great because then you can write dialogue that people actually speak and you're not just talking techno babble. So it all, and my father was a film editor, mostly documentaries and a few infamous genre films like Bloodsucking Freaks and Ganja and Hess and things like that. And learning the editing from him now then taught me, I know what I need for coverage. So you know what to shoot, you get what you need, so it'll cut in the editing room. So so that's why I think all those things together make for a director. Yeah.
Now, when you, as I get to your question, because I know we talk about you've obviously dabbled in the adult industry as far as filming there.
Softcore, not I've worked with adult actors, but it's always been simulated, never hardcore pornography.
Gotcha. Okay. Well, that's why I want to clarify distinction.
Yes.
That's what question to ask is what is, from the standpoint that you've worked in, what are some, I'm thinking of it like from us, just viewers from that, what are some misconceptions about that type of industry that maybe people don't realize as far as production filming? Some people say, oh, well, could be, some things are just straight up porn, something, but even porn has it's filmed, it's done. Like, what are some misconceptions about this type of industry people don't realize?
Well, a lot of people don't realize what softcore. Well, okay, when I did it, I started working for a French producer named Milan Sarisky back in 1996.
Mm-hmm.
He had done the Emmanuel movies in Europe, and then he'd moved to America with Roger Corman, and he was doing Emmanuel in Space with Krista Allen and Justine, and he was about to start Click and Butterscotch, based on Milo Manera, who was a famous graphic artist who worked with Fellini and Truffaut, but also did these adult graphic novels that were in Penthouse and
right.
Ninja Turtles loves them and all that stuff.
Yeah.
So it were these comedy sci-fi, the Click's about a remote control that can sexually turn people on, and Butterscotch was about the adventures of an invisible man.
Okay.
So I knew the comic books, and that's how he was impressed with me. And on the sets in those days, which a lot of people don't know, which is why I'm trying to work on a documentary that because this almost everything I did in this genre is sort of like barely been released or is under the radar, and people really don't realize there's like a lot of documentaries about porno and the dark side of that business, but the whole soft erotic sci-fi comedies that Fred Olen Ray and Jim Wynorski and Dave Dakota and Full Moon and Seduction Simon and Misty Monday and that world has rarely been touched upon in anything. And of course, what people think when they watch a good simulated love scene is people are actually having sex, and that's not the case. When we were starting it, the rules were women wore patches, which were like big Band-Aids over them, and guys wore socks, which was like a sock with a rubber band on your junk. And, so it was nothing actually touched. And then, of course, you had to shoot around that and make sure that it looked good, so you weren't showing what is not believable. But, that's the whole thing, that there is no actual sex. Now, that changed by the time I did the last series, just at the end of the whole soft erotic genre, when I did Emmanuel Through Time, because more and more actresses were crossing over from adult into softcore because they couldn't necessarily find the actresses, so they got porn actresses to do these. In the porn world, softcore means they're actually having sex. They just put like a chair in front of them for television, because they sold the Playboy channel at the time. You couldn't show the penetration, but they were actually doing it. So they believed that we were actually, softcore meant sex films. We just block it with something. But that's not the case. We were still simulating. Nobody was actually doing anything. And then you started blending actors that were adult actors with late night cable actors, with actors who had never done nudity before. That became an interesting dynamic where you're trying to, show it all without, to explain to everybody, it's not as far as you think it is.
But I mean, the history of using adult actors or quote unquote adult actresses, it's long been, it's been Marilyn Chambers with Rabid, and you've got all kinds of other. I mean, I was telling you before in the pre-interview that the highest grossing independent film prior to Halloween was Deep Throat. So it was a profitable business. It's just, you want to do, like, it came a long way from bachelor films in the 50s,
Yes. No, well, look, I said in the 70s, when the porn industry really exploded, all those actors were actors that were just comfortable with them. It's because I said you had Old Calcutta on Broadway, you had Hair, the Burning the Bras, the whole movement. It was no big thing. So for actors, if they were okay with it and could actually do it, they were like, I'm an actor. This is just a scene. And those movies, it was just a 2-minute scene. It wasn't 25 minutes of sex. There was no
it wasn't your extended.
And it was films. And that's why Boogie Nights and those movies that show that those things. There were car chases. There were special effects. There were, Devil and Miss Jones Part 2 is actually one of my favorites of those, because it's great. I mean, it's a good story. It's fantastical. It's funny. It's I don't know if you've ever seen it, but there's lots going on in that movie.
And how did you get from softcore and horror into Lifetime films?
Yeah. Okay. Well, the misconception of this business is that a director has any control over his career. De Palma actually said that in his documentary. Like, why do you make that choice? Like, you think we have a choice? It's like, when the money comes through, you do what's there. So you pursue movies that you really want to make forever that usually never get produced, and then there's the ones that you're like, okay, let's do it. So with that, I mean, as I said, the good thing was that since I was never that successful in any genre, I never got pigeonholed into that. So, like there's nothing out there. It was a culty movie, but a lot of people still don't know it. It was hard to find, as were most of my horror films. And then same thing with late night cable. It's for a certain audience that they like that, but I wasn't making millions off of it. These were just people don't know who directs these movies, or they know the actors sometimes. It's the women that are the celebrities, not the filmmakers, the writers. So you didn't really get pigeonholed in that either. And then since I love comedy and I could do anything, I was always writing spec scripts, developing other things. I was able to get the producer of the Emmanuel movies, because he too was good friends with Bob Shea at New Line, and he was trying to get out of there too. So he produced a movie called Dead Man's Curve with Matthew Lillard and Kerry Russell, which is an interesting little thriller. And then after that, he wanted to do another one, and I wrote the script called Tomorrow by Midnight, which was like a dark comedy thriller in 1999, and that became sort of a stepping stone. And then he had an idea for a comedy that turned into Blonde and Blonder, that was made years later with Pamela Anderson and Denise Richards. So I sort of got him. I mean, he wanted to too, but I got him to get out of the genre to try other things as well. Like, his bread and butter was late night. That's what he sold, but he was trying to move into mainstream, and so was I, of course. I mean, people warned me that if I started doing these late night movies, I was going to stay in there. That's what Jim Morales.
Oh, wow.
That was going to be my career. And I was like, no, because I'm not in this business just to see a bunch of naked women. And, that's that was not my goal. So, I mean, to a certain extent, it can hurt you, because if people look at your IMDb, even when you use pseudonyms, it all comes back to you now. And if they see anything with sex in the title, they assume pornography, and
they label you, and you're kind of black. You're branded by. Yep.
Did you ever think of a creative pseudonym, nom de plume?
Oh, I used a lot. I used many different ones. And later on, in the beginning, I didn't care because I was proud of the movie. So when I did Rod Steel, 0014, You Only Live Until You Die, my James Bond parody, I thought that movie turned into a cult film, and we did an R-rated version. Later on, I started using like a lot of silly names. I guess my favorite one is, well, if you ever see the Emmanuel Through Time thing, the whole idea of this Emmanuel's on a blimp traveling through wormholes to other dimensions was based on this double coconut that Alon Surisky had gotten. It was like a $500 beautiful coconut that looks like the shape of a woman's buttocks.
Wow.
And that's what he wanted the blimp to look like, flying through the wormhole, because it was like a big ass in the sky. I mean, silly. But the last movie, I think my pseudonym was directed by A. Coco Nut.
That's good. That's a good mind keeper there. Yeah.
And then I used then I did a Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory sex parody, and I called myself Stuart Burton, which was the director's last name of Willy Wonka and Tim Burton.
Tim Burton, yep.
So I was combining names. My ghost story was Casper Van Zool.
Yep.
So I was getting creative with
that's awesome.
Yeah.
No,
Bugsy Shapiro was my Vegas like Saturday Night Live
makes sense.
So Bugsy for Vegas, and Shapiro for Ken Shapiro for the Groove Tube was inspired, one of the inspirations for.
But what's the difference on set between, say, a man and a woman who reconnect after years versus a Party Bus from Hell? What's the difference in terms of acting, in terms of directing them, attitudes, anything of that?
Well, it all comes down to the actors and the budget and the performances. I mean, with Party Bus to Hell, it was almost all first-time actors. Nobody had made a movie yet, so you're trying to get a feel of who's what and good where, and how to work with them as best as possible to get the performance out of them. With a more experienced actor, if they know what they're doing, you don't have to give them that direction. If you cast well, you leave them alone most of the time and let them do it. When I did Tomorrow by Midnight, I worked with Alexis Arquette, who was wonderful, but I realized he's not good at the beginning of the takes because he doesn't have all the lines down. So I'd always shoot his coverage at the end when we're doing a conversation scene. So by the time I got to him, he had done it so many times he was on, versus like making him do it over and over and over again. And so you find out which actors are better in the beginning, which actors need more takes to get comfortable, and then you try to, even though you're on a press for time, if an actor really is unhappy and they want another take, you give them another take, because if they feel like you're just rushing through it and it doesn't matter, they're going to shut down. So it's always, and it's keeping the actors away from the problems on the set, because there's 1,000 issues going on when you're making a movie, and you don't want the actors to know anything about that, because they've just got to worry about performance. So whenever I've worked with actors who are also producers, it's hard because they can never separate themselves from the producing and the money and the acting. I've done that a handful of times in a few movies that was, you try, but they just can't take off one hat and wear the other one,
That actually is a great segue, because this is a question I was going to ask, and this might be part of the answer. Maybe you have a different one, but as a director, what do you find is one of, and it might change, but what's a great challenge as a director when you work on films? It could be anything. Like, what do you find is maybe the most difficult part of it?
It's.
I'm sure it's a pretty wide range.
Every movie is its own animal. It's never the same way twice. I mean,
okay.
You always think, well, I can lean back on that, but it's so much time. It's its own thing. If you're trying to do one of those one takes, like oneers, the Player and Touch of Evil and all, which every director at some point wants to do. John Frankenheimer had a great line about that. He's like, when you start off as a director, you get your film school thing out of the way in your first couple things. You're going to do the shot from under the glass table, because everyone does the shot from under the glass table. Eventually, you'll get your own style. So what I say is that you're not going to start off as usually Orson Welles. You're not going to start off as a genius. You're going to learn, and you're going to emulate your favorite directors. Gus Van Sant and Psycho, whatever. But it's like that. Hopefully, you don't go that far. But it's the idea is that and then as the more you do, you learn your own style and your own sensibilities based on your influences, and then you find your own self as a director. And it comes down to the material too. It's like, the music, everything is based on what the material is. If you're doing something that's a drama, you're going to do it one way. If you're doing an action film, you're going to embrace that. The comedy is always interwoven, how I'm doing that thing. But it's almost an impossible question to answer, because it really is. It all depends on each film. Each film should be its own thing. If you're shooting every film the same way, I think you're doing it wrong.
Okay. Yeah.
You look at Richard Attenborough. Would you ever think Richard Attenborough, director of Gandhi, Magic, and A Chorus Line? Whereas I love Hitchcock, and there's a theme of most of his movies. He did a branch out a little bit, Mr. and Mrs. Smith, and a couple things, but he got pigeonholed, and he was great at thrillers, and I love those movies.
Now
I'm glad love directors who expand.
I'm glad you brought him up, because he's in one of my favorite films based on true crime that nobody ever has seen, and that's 10 Rillington Place. I love that film.
It's great. Yep. He's fantastic in that. And he's hysterical in Trial and Error with Peter Sellers, which is a brilliant courtroom comedy that's funny that no one knows about.
Now, I wondered, because you're in the mid to lower budgeted range for the majority of yours, do you ever pull a Roger Corman or a Jesus Franco? You've got a set for 2 weeks and you'll shoot 3 films, like that kind of thing.
Well, okay, that's the story behind The Hazing, which is coming out finally again, and hopefully a big Blu-ray edition in this fall. It has a DVD now, but yes, I was doing. Okay, so I was doing. Saritsky, after we had done the first series, he wanted to do a series. I think originally it was called Twilight Sex, so a Twilight Zone sex series, which I was all for, because.
Well, I was going to say, are they sparkly?
The Twilight? No, this was before that. The Twilight Zone. There was no Twilight yet.
No glitter, no.
That was before Twilight. Which of course is 50 whatever. Anyway,
that's a whole thing. Yeah.
So I wrote. So my thought was, okay. So it eventually was called the Sex Files, the series. So it was X Files, Sex Files, and I did one that was like an X File parody that was a lot of fun, called Alien Files or Alien Erotica, that we worked really hard on. And then I told him, I said, why don't we do the old Roger Corman thing? Because he was friends with Roger Corman. I'll write a script. I'll write 2 scripts that can take place on the same set.
Okay.
And we'll do a late night episode of, the series called Restless Souls, which will be a, haunted house, Rosemary's Baby, Legend of Hell House, haunting with more sex, movie. And then I'll also write a script called The Hazing, which started as sort of a semi-sequel to Hell Night, because I was working with a producer at the time who had produced Hell Night.
Oh, Hell Night, the Linda Blair.
The Linda Blair movie, yes.
Yeah. Yep.
The Hazing started as Hell Night 2, The Hazing. That was the initial thing, because Joe Wolf, who was a producer on Hell Night, Nightmare on Elm Street, and Halloween, he thought he had the rights. He didn't, because Bruce Gone Curtis actually shared it with him, so it never happened. But I did write the script, and then I said, well, I can adapt it, lose the Hell Night connection, just make it the Hazing. So I wrote the Hazing. I wrote Restless Souls. We built a great set that was a big haunted house set on stage that both films could work. But Lime couldn't get the finances for the Hazing, so they only wound up doing Restless Souls, which I wrote, I didn't direct, on the set, and then they tore down the sets. And then for years, I tried to get the Hazing off the ground, and finally did, which I'm happy about because it turned out well. But that was completely I think I'm going to do the Roger Corman thing. Let's build a set, make 2 movies on the same set, one that could be a horror film and not a late night cable. Because I was trying to push him out of it. I was trying to say, we can make a lot of money. Scream's coming out. It's going to make a fortune.
I mean, I think Roger Corman did that with The Terror, and then he made something else because he had the cast.
Yeah, he did it all the time. He was a master of that. Yeah, he was. Yeah. And the thing too, and again with Roger Corman, which is the big key to Corman, is he was a filmmaker. He was a very good filmmaker. Yeah. So when he started careers, unlike most producers who don't understand, they just look at the money, Corman knew how you made a movie. He knew the shortcuts and all that stuff too. But the people that came from Corman who really learned, and why they respect him so much, is because they were limited, but they were given enough leg room to make movies.
And it's funny. I'm sure you've done the same as I, and you've gone back into his 50s and 60s catalog. And some of those are like, yeah, you probably could make it with a high 8 film back then or what have you. But he always made a point of making sure they were interesting. You can be low budgeted, but you can be low budgeted and interesting versus just no idea how to put a script together. So
absolutely.
You got to get, what's your trick into getting the audience to be interested versus just, boobs and blood? What are you doing to try to get them in there?
Well, hopefully you write a story that's engaging, that's characters that you care about, performances that are, you attach to. That's a key part. With the late night cable stuff, I had a lot more story and plot than most of these things did. And that's why a lot of them were released as R-rated things, because they did work as a comedy as well. My thing was, if you cut out all the sex, you'd still have a movie. And that's what I was going for in those movies, which was usually not the case, because if you cut out the sex, you had maybe a 20-minute
film. When the NBC affiliate decides to show it at 10 o'clock.
You're right, yes. Well, we got into Blockbuster, we got into Hollywood Video, places that would never have taken a softcore or sex movie. It transitioned out of there. So, the old rule too, with because now there's been a lot of questions about nudity, because now horror films have very little to none nudity at the moment. But it was back in the days in the 80s, it was mandatory for selling international. Within the first 5 minutes, you needed to do. The Hazing was a perfect example. In the beginning of the Hazing, when they're changing into their Halloween costumes, the actress who plays Delia, Nectar Rose, who does take off her top, you're supposed to see her, but she was comfortable doing nudity in one scene. So the scene later with the tongue is the scene. But since she didn't do the opening, we added the 2 strippers at the frat party in the beginning dancing on the tables, because they're like, we have to have nudity in the first 10 minutes, otherwise we can't make sales. And then they're like, oh, that's Rolfe being exploitive. I'm like, I didn't even want in the movie, but like sometimes you have to do it for
I mean, to me, a movie that kind of epitomizes the best of that is Body Double. Body Double's got, it does have the sex, but it also has the strong acting performances in the story.
I love Body Double. Is probably one of my favorite, not my favorite De Palma film. I think that's De Palma is always that. I love a lot of his movies. I also think he blatantly ripped off Hitchcock and didn't give him credit, because he should have had, like, based on, or at least inspired by, Dressed to Kill. And there's so much Hitchcock and its sisters. It's all there. But Body Double is like, De Palma is like perfect. Like, he embraces the violence and the nudity and the sex and the pornography, as well as the Hitchcock story. I had a joke with that. I think about Body Double. What Hitchcock movies make Body Double? But I think that's still the thing with what you heard the story about Lucas, that when Lucas was getting to film, he was either going to do the science fiction thing, or he was going to do porno.
Yeah.
So he would have made $1 billion either way, depending where he went. He's like, these are the two safe.
Well, actually, though, in the mid '70s, that would have been a legitimate choice.
Absolutely, and that's what he decided back and forth between either do I do a porno or do I do TX 2HX
Now here's a good question, because I always like this one too, because again, from the director's standpoint too, some films are great, other films, there's always that mixture of what's good, what's not. What do you think, as a director and a creative mind, what is something that could potentially be maybe a film idea starts out good, but then you say along the line, something's going to ruin this. Like, what's something that could kill a good film that could have been a good film? I know it's probably not obvious, but it's just out of is there something specific? It can be different.
Kill a good film. I mean, it's between interference with there's too many cooks in the kitchen or crooks in the kitchen. Producers, everyone. If people aren't on the same page, if they don't know what kind of movie they're making, which you can see a lot, where somebody wants this movie, somebody else wants this movie, and the movie is schizophrenic. That's why the whole thing is, the only person you can make a movie, the only person you don't need on the set to make a movie is a director.
Right.
And the only person who can make a movie something special is the director.
Yeah.
Because technically, if you hire everybody else, someone can yell action and cut, you can have a movie. But a vision, and if you let the filmmaker make that vision, that's where you might get something. You have to roll the dice. I mean, they actually that was a great that season of Project Greenlight with I'm friends with John Gulager, who got the job, and that was Matt Damon thing, saying, look, the script is a horror film, but I think Gulager will do something special with it. So let's go with the director who will do something with the story versus just put it on the page, because it'll be nothing there. So with that, you want someone with that. So I think that's the thing with directing, is that you need to know what your movie is. You need to know the tone. And I thought that, especially when you deal with multiple genres, when you're doing horror comedy, because it's a thin line about, is it too funny? Is it too silly? Is it too scary? Is it too gory? And I've had producers throughout my whole career where no one quite knows what I'm doing. I've tricked many people into doing things that they don't think. There's Nothing Out is a perfect example. There's a famous, it turned into the famous thing. I don't know if you've seen it or not. In the script, there was a scene where a character is there's a monster chasing them. He's a little higher up. He sees the chandelier. He grabs the chandelier and he swings out of the room. Well, the house that we were shooting in didn't have a chandelier. So I kept thinking, okay, how am I going to get him out of the room?
Right.
And I went to see a movie that was just projected wrong. It wasn't the movie's fault. It was just projected wrong without the mat at the top.
Right. Okay.
And the microphone was in every shot of the movie. And the audience was hysterical. And I had seen enough movies, especially low-budget horror films, where you do see mistakes in movies, and you're like, wait a minute, that's not supposed to be there. And the audience is so aware at that point. I said, because it was a comedy horror film, well, why doesn't the character stand up? And when he does, the microphone dips into the frame. It's going to look like a mistake. The character sees it. He grabs the microphone and swings out of the room, and
there you go.
On the mic.
Hey, why not?
Now, my father was the producer on the film. He was like, is that going to work? I said, yeah, I think if you do it like really quickly and you don't cause attention to it, you don't do a trauma where it's overdone, you'll get away with it. The crew did not know what the hell I was doing. They were like, is this a Mel Brooks movie? Like, you can't do this.
I was going to say, it's like a Blazing Saddles feel with that one.
It's breaking the fourth wall. I break the fourth wall twice in the movie, even though it's not a scary movie. It's not Airplane, but I did cross the line a few times because, and the reviews were that this movie was so confidently done that it gets away with this breezy, what the heck nature of its atmosphere, because it knows what it is and knows what it's doing.
Yep.
And, so those are the kind of things. And I learned what was most important about that and later films is that whenever you have something that everyone is afraid of doing, that's what you hold on to. You don't get rid of that, because that's what people are going to talk about. That's the scene that people are going to remember, that they're going to talk about. Oh, that's the scene in the hazing. It's the tongue scene. Everyone was terrified. They said, you can't do this. It's like a porno. I'm like, I know how to shoot this. It's going to be remembered. And sure enough, because I was like, that's the Reanimator, headless head scene, and Evil Dead with the rape in the woods. I mean, horror film, the nipple, the lipstick, and Night of the Demons. You want to push the limit and do that one thing where people are like, I can't believe they did that. No matter what you're doing, something about Mary, the sperm in the hair. Which Cameron Diaz was terrified about it. I don't want to do this. They're like, do it, and it becomes the poster. So I've learned that. So hold on to your guns, because everyone has an opinion. But if you stick to what you really believe in and say this is going to work, you may not be right 100% of the time, but you'll have something that at least you tried something and you weren't just playing it safe.
See, I always think of when producers are dealing with stuff. The first 5 minutes of the '60s film The Party with Peter Sellers,
Brilliant.
and the director blows up a building, and Peter Sellers messes it up, but the building's already blown up, so you gotta make something out of a bad situation. How many times are there legitimately on a set where you just either improvise or just go with it?
Probably a lot.
If you're doing a comedy and you can break the, one of the erotic films, the Invisible Man movie I did, it was a genie film, and it was really based on like a Disney's Aladdin, and it was a very fast screwball comedy sex movie. And at one point, the genie's supposed to say "batter up," and then a baseball bat just flies up out of nowhere, and he grabs it, and you hear them, it's like that props just appear out of nowhere. And the bat they gave me that day was this red, inflatable, stupid. It wasn't. They couldn't get a real bat, so they got me this red bat. And sure enough, I'm like, "Batter up," and then the bat flies up. He catches it. He goes, "What is this? Props?" I'm just like, I'm going to say it on camera. I'm going to say this is bullshit, and let the character actually just make. I've done that a few times where if they give me something wrong, I cause attention to it, and I've done this in scripts too. I'll tell you one story about one of my family films. I wrote a script called Timber the Treasure Dog, with talking animals. I was rewrite, and it was a funny script. And at one point, some character says, "Well, everything, Miss Smarty Pants." It's a male dog talking to a female dog. "You know everything, Miss Smarty Pants," and the female dog says, no, male dog says, "You know everything, Miss Smarty Pants, minus the pants." And then they got a note from the Catholic whatever group saying, "Oh, that's a sex joke. You can't do that." It's a sex joke. You can't do that. And like, what are you talking about? It's two dogs. And like, so they made me rewrite it. So in the movie now, because I hate that censorship, I can't stand that. They say, "You know everything, Miss Smarty Pants," and she goes, "Yeah, dogs don't wear pants." He goes, "I know, and that's very troubling. Somebody should do something about that." So it's like that's Josh Whedon had that too. Whenever anyone, I guess on Buffy, would say the reason why the show is so brilliant is because of the dialogue. So he's like, "Oh yeah, well I'm going to do Hush and have nobody talk, and that's the one that wins the Emmy." And then they complain that there's too much sex in the show, so then he does an entire episode where it's all sex because, again, if you have a creative, you're like, don't tell me what I can or can't do. That's why Stanley Kramer did it to Mad, 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 Mad World. You're the drama guy. You're not a comedy director. You can't do comedy. Oh, yeah, I'll show you a comedy. Brilliant comedy, one of the best ever made. So,
well, and I almost think you missed your calling, given your background and your sensibilities and your non-prudishness and all that. Did you ever consider a movie like Porky's? Because that kind of thing, I think, would have been in your wheelhouse.
Oh, I did it. I Pretty Cool 1 and 2. I tried for years because at some point, I grew up on Risky Business and Porky's and Zapped and all those movies. I was like, why? In the 90s, everything became these sort of PG-13. There was no sex, and I was like, people don't have a sex drive anymore. What happened to the nudity? So I wrote a script called Hormones the Movie, which was a pure throwback to all of those 80s films. And it almost got made a few times, never happened. And then when Stritsky was doing Emmanuel 2000, American Pie came out. And I was like, there we go. Finally someone brought it back and I made a fortune. And that's when he wanted to do Emmanuel Pie. And, I was not interested in doing that, but I eventually did write it. And he loved the script so much because it was funny. He wanted me to direct it, and I said, I have to rewrite the whole script because I'll do it if I can do an R-rated teen comedy, like a throwback to the 80s. And that became pretty cool. And then we eventually made a very, very low-budget sequel to that, which is funny, too. I got to do a musical. I got to do a Western script. I managed to do almost every genre. Now, even things I never thought I'd do romantic dramas or those, and I've done those, too. Bonnie and Clyde stories.
I'm going to start an online petition. Bring back Hormone the movie.
Well, we got this published through Bear Manor. Bear Manor released that, and they just released a few. They've been releasing a few books of produced and unproduced scripts. So they did like a volume of the Emmanuel Through Time series I did, which has 2 scripts that the producer refused to do because it was too controversial. He thought I was playing with alternate realities and things, and I was watching Sliders, and I said, well, let's do it, but do it like smartly and make statements with everything. And I did one about the pharmaceutical world, and he found it so depressing. So I rewrote the whole script. So that one was so there are a few things that have come out like that.
So tell us now, what are you currently working on? What have you worked on? What's going on with you right now for the audience, so people can kind of know where you're at?
Well, right now I'm lucky to have a film that I wrote in production in St. Louis called Love on the Hill.
Okay.
I just found out through my own research because they
A
never tell the
rom-com?
writers anything.
Is it a romantic comedy?
It's a romantic comedy. It's a very Hallmarky kind of romantic comedy. It's independent. It's not a Hallmark, but it's independent about
that kind of feel,
baseball player who's washed up and a food influencer who meet back in their hometown and fall in love.
Okay.
I just found out the deli owner of the restaurant that they get into a relationship is played by Ralph Macchio. So that's cool. So they've got, and the lead guy is from Chicago Fire, and the girl did a season of Stranger Things. So they've got a pretty good cast. So I'm fingers crossed it's going to be good.
It must have a fairly decent budget then.
Yeah, it's a little under $1 million, from what I've been told.
Oh, nice.
So it's not bad. But I had to fight for money, and producers are great. Anyway, that's in production, and that shoots to the end of the month. And then I have The Hazing. That it was a film now that's over 20 years old with Tiffany Shepis and Brad Dourif. And
how long did it sit on the shelf?
Which one, The Hazing?
Yeah.
Well, it took 7 years to get it made. Once we got it made, we were able to sell it to Blockbuster, and it got bought pretty. The movie was good, so it got sold, but it never really got the attention. People thought it should have been a theatrical and should have played festivals. The producer at the time was uncertain what the film was because, again, scary, funny, so he kind of abandoned it a little bit. But it got released on DVD only. But now we're going to do a special remastering Blu-ray edition with all the bells and whistles and stuff, and it's really cool. And Tiffany Shepis is great, and it's one of her favorite films. And Brad Dourif was wonderful to work with.
Yeah, but Tiffany Shepis actually is quite a good actor. I really like her in her role. She's really good.
Yeah, she's great.
Okay, now let's get down to brass tacks here. I want to make your brain move a little bit.
Yeah.
If you were stuck on an island and could only watch 3 films for the rest of your life, what would they be?
Well, the 3 films I've always said in the 80s, although if you go back to the 40s, it's so hard.
Yeah. I mean, you can.
But I think I could watch The Blues Brothers any day.
That's my number 1 all-time film. Good job.
All-time film. I never get tired of The Blues Brothers. It's brilliant. I mean, and it's everything: car crashes, comedy, music numbers. It's fantastic.
All in one. Yep.
I love musicals, so that's a big plus. I always say Blues Brothers. I usually say, although I love it, but I don't watch it that often. So I would probably go with maybe Jesus. I love After Hours.
Okay.
Scorsese's After Hours is great. It's been very influential in my career. And then the other one, although I don't know if I'd watch it every day, but I do think it's a fantastic sequel, was Psycho 2.
Okay.
People always like Psycho 2. I usually threw E.T. in there, but I'd say those are
Psycho 2 of the guy Dennis Farina. I like him in that film.
Dennis Farina. Oh yeah, he's great.
Yeah,
but the whole movie was. I mean, that's a movie that should have been terrible. I mean, in the 80s with the gore galore, but they got the right director, Richard Franklin, who knows and honored Hitchcock. Perkins was fantastic. It was a smart script by Tom Holland. That's when I started following Tom Holland, which is why I went to see Fright Night and Cloak and Dagger and all that stuff that he was doing. So, you really saw that path. And I met Richard Franklin before he passed away. Wonderful guy, great Australian director.
If they just had left him alone at the diner, nothing would have happened.
Yeah, they couldn't leave him alone. But that's the whole point of it. No, I say if you watch those 2 movies together, they're perfect. And I had one dinner with Tom Holland, and he talked about he never worked that hard on a script than on Psycho 2 because it really had to all mesh together and feel like a complete project. So I do love that movie, and it's beautifully directed. It's
Yeah, I agree. I think it's highly underrated.
And Jerry Goldsmith's score.
Yeah.
Again, only Jerry Goldsmith could follow a Bernard Herrmann. There's nobody else. So.
Well, yeah, no, I mean that's fantastic, and I mean, again, this is such a great thing. We can see, and obviously, we want you to come back. We want you to, please share more with us, give us details. If we can share anything that you're working on, by all means, we will do that. Again, I think it's a great this is great opportunity learning from this. We've had a lot of people that like the series coming in. It's always nice to get people from different spectrums. You know, we've got so many people that are coming from this background that want to share things, and we're glad you can do that.
And for the next time, I'd love to focus on, because of your knowledge, and you've obviously had to deal with younger people breaking in. What does it take to get into the industry these days? Now, you're not going to answer that now because that's a half an hour answer.
We'll do it. Yeah, we'll do a whole topic on that. If you have some thoughts, we would love to, because we're trying to give insights for people too. We want to be encouraging as well. Like maybe people want to break in. Like we've had actors that are looking to help, trying to figure out where to start and things like that. So,
I mean, not everybody's going to walk into Mission Impossible. I mean, you got to work your way.
Well,
Well, the thing is, which is what people are saying, a lot of people, not just me, but because now, in the old days, film costs a lot of money. I mean, the crews, the lighting, the whole thing. But now with cell phones, anyone can make a movie, for better and worse. So the thing is, you got to just do it. You got to get on tape, get stuff made. You know, you can do it for nothing. You do it with your friends. I mean, I was doing that through all high school. I was just, rounding people up to do it. And that's why when I finally did There's Nothing Out There, to me, it was easy because it was the first time I had a crew and people that actually wanted to be there. That I wasn't having to pizza, come on, do the shot,
Didn't Michael Bay do a couple films on, I don't know, was it an Apple phone or something?
Probably
like that?
did, but he was doing, $2 million commercials before he got into the features. When you were David Fincher, when you're having like all the money in the world to do a 5-minute short, that's why he got spoiled. That's why I need $200 million now for me. That's why Roger Corman people know how to do things but they know how to work around the idea. I mean, that's the trick, is like, can you do something? Zemeckis, after that Zemeckis thing, I talked to the PA who wanted to get into producing. He's like, can you do a decent movie for $5 million? Because that's like the catering budget on Forrest Gump. And I'm like, I mean, Reservoir Dogs just came out. I'm like, you can $5 million, you can make a movie, but in that world, when you're coming from Hollywood with, 60, 70 at the time movies, they're like, how do you even do anything?
Right.
That's again, And the thing is, if you can do a movie for a good movie, like the director of Obsession, if you can do a movie for under $1 million, that obviously, if it makes that much money, you should be able to get more money. But they only trust you with the budgets that you worked with. Right. So it's like, no, it's like I always said I can make a $500,000 film look like a $2 million film. I can't make it look like a $10 million film. That's too much. If you try to do that, you're going to fail. I can make a $2 million film look like a $10 million. You got to know what your limitations are and work with it. So anyway,
that's great. Yeah, no, but this will be awesome. We'll definitely, and if we get any questions in the meantime too, we'll field them and if anybody's watching this, whether watching live or watching later, if you have questions that you'd like to have answered, let us know, because we will definitely throw those to Rolfe. Coming back here, we can talk to him about that. We can dive into some other things on the creative side. Again,
and when you come back, I'm going to ask you a controversial question.
Yeah, save that for hold that thought. That'll be good.
I'm going to say, which actor has been an incredible person to work with that you weren't expecting, and who was somebody that you worked with was, let's just say, disappointed you? And you don't have to answer that now.
We'll make that a cliffhanger so people want to come back. If you want to know that answer, come back, because we do too. So it's with anticipation. So I give you something to look forward to. But we will share more with Rolfe. We're so glad you could join us tonight there. We look forward to more.
It was a lot of fun. Good questions.
Oh, yeah, no, we'd love to have you
tell different stories, because sometimes you just tell the same story over and over again if the questions are the same. So
it's okay.
Nice. And one more time to anybody watching, I fucking love that shirt.
Yes.
I love that.
You didn't hear it at the beginning.
It doesn't say what it's from, so I like shirts where if you know, but it doesn't just tell you the title. I think it's much more.
You can't give it away. Yeah. No. You don't want to give it away. If you don't know it, you got to know it.
Yeah, I tend not to buy the shirts with the titles because I'm like, oh,
it's too easy. Yeah, it's like giving the answer to the test. You got, if you're a true fan, you know what it is. So
if there's anybody watching, you can just put your Google Lens or whatever it is, and you can get the.
No, that's cheating. Come on now, don't encourage people.
It's probably the best ending to a horror film ever made. I mean, it's
and if you don't know that, you're living under a rock.
Which do you like better, that ending or the original Friday the 13th?
Oh, I like this ending. Okay. The original Friday the 13th is a jump scare, like Carrie or whatever. It's fine, but this one gets under your skin.
That really gets you.
This is disturbing. I'd say the ending of this movie and the ending of John Carpenter's The Thing are probably the two best horror endings.
Yeah.
You're gonna have to sleep with the lights on for sure. Yeah, that's the stuff that nightmares are made of, and not the Nightmare on Elm Street types. It's the ones that you can't get away from, right?
Kurt Russell still gets asked that question to this day. He still gets asked that question.
I know. Oh yeah, it's a big controversy. Yeah.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, we appreciate you guys being here.
Probably on a desert island, I could watch, because you always
That's
find
a good one.
Thing because it doesn't answer just enough questions to keep the conversation. Every time you see it, you're like not sure. Did the dog go into his room? Did the dog, you just don't know for sure. And it's wonderful. You don't
controversial.
If you don't spoon feed the audience, I think that's great.
Sometimes it's what you don't see that makes it.
That's so much what you don't see. Yeah.
There you go. Well, ladies and gentlemen, it's been a pleasure. We've had Rolfe Kanefsky here. We hope you guys are excited for more. We'll keep you posted. We'll have Rolfe come back. Again, if you love this series, make sure you're following here. I'll put it up one more time in case you missed it in the opening. But this is part of the newer series that we're doing here. There's the photo. 1001 Cryptic Tales, a spectacular horror series where we feature fine folks. Again, like Rolfe directing and producing, as well as we've got actors. We have some more lined up. We have special effects people coming on. We have a whole list, goes on and on and on. So we hope you guys are excited. But we're going to have Rolfe come back, talk more.
Rolfe has been his own grip before.
Yes.
Which is more we can get into as well. So if you want more, make sure you like and follow us everywhere. Make sure you stay tuned. We'll post updates there. We'll make sure you guys know right away when content comes back, and we'll let you know when Rolfe is coming back. And make sure you check out his stuff as well. A lot of great stuff out there. Again, idea is to raise awareness and appreciation for people
and Rolfe, one more last thing. If people want to see something of yours, is it available on Tubi? Is it available
streaming? Where is it streaming?
Some stuff is on Tubi. Some stuff is on other things. It's Amazon Prime has, I think, a few things. It comes and goes in different spurts. It's some of it's hard to find. There's things, there's a lot that's been released on Blu-ray. Amazon, you can find things that are, still in print or, but my career's always been, I'm always amazed when anyone's seen my stuff, because it's like, it's always sort of under the radar. And
I currently have bookmarked Nightmare Man.
Currently what, Nightmare Man?
I have it bookmarked to watch next.
Oh yes, Nightmare Man. Nightmare Man was probably the most, because of the After Dark 8 Films to Die For, that had the most exposure of anything I did at the time, which some people got, some people didn't get, because again, it was a little offbeat and a little quirky, but Tiffany's wonderful. I'm very proud of that movie.
It's been an absolute pleasure, Rolfe. We'll do this again every couple weeks if you're bored, or you know what, if you live streamed us from one of your sets, that would be cool too.
That would be cool. I don't know when that's coming yet. I'm hoping to get back on the set. It's been a while with COVID and life, but
if you want to take us with you, we'll be happy to go. So I mean, live on set, live behind the scenes, kind of stuff.
Yeah, we'll do like the Lost in La Mancha, the documentary behind Jerry Gilliam.
We can wave at PJ Souls. How you doing?
There you go. So if you guys want that and more, make sure you stay tuned. But we appreciate Rolfe being here. We hope you guys had a great time. We look forward to more. Again, make sure you like and subscribe, follow. You guys know how to do it, and you'll get all the latest and greatest right here. But we are hoping you all have a wonderful evening. Thank you again for watching. Thank you for being here and for the support. We say good night for now and goodbye. But of course, until next time, we hope to see you, each and every one of you, at the next show. Happy week to you all. Good night and goodbye, everybody. We'll see you next time.
Ciao.
Thank you for listening to the What's Up Bro show. Catch all the latest live action on your favorite podcast streaming services, including Spreaker, Spotify, iHeartRadio, and more. You can also check out episodes on the studio's official YouTube channel. Subscribe and become a member today. Don't forget to also turn on notifications so you'll know when new content is uploaded. Stay tuned and don't miss a single moment. We love and appreciate all your support. And as always, we will see you at the show.